to do a pair of toe-up socks on the His and Her sock loom, the fine gauge from KB Looms. And one thing that's really cool is actually, okay, focus in. Oh, I hope I focus in the right way. Oh, you got it. This is a 56 peg loom. It says kblooms.com. This is nice to know when you're gauging. There'll be a direct link in a video description below on how to gauge properly. It's an important thing to do that a lot of people don't do and end up their socks not fitting right and they regret not taking the time to just gauge. Before we really get into it, I'm going to go over the supplies you need. You need your His and Her sock loom set. You need your sock yarn of choice. I really like the loom tool that comes with this kit. It really works good for this loom, so I actually use it. And I actually have 2 of these sets because for me it's very convenient to be able to work up to a certain point on one sock and then work up to the same point on a second sock, just because then I'm not sitting here, I don't have to count every single row. It's easier to make sure I'm getting the same size. And how this heel matched up so perfectly, I love that. Total fluke, but I love it. We got this cute texture up here. So I have 2 looms going at one time. That's just how I prefer to do socks. Okay, so first we got to talk about picking out sock yarn. Move that out of the way. Look at that. Okay, this I actually got at a yard sale, so some of this ripped off, but it's Premier Yarns. You can buy this a lot of different places, or you can go on the website. But there are lots of different sock yarns that you can just buy at your local craft store. And of course it goes over, okay, this one is a number 1, is super fine. I'll hold this on my finger just so you can see. It's pretty thin. Now I also have this yarn, which looks about the same, and it's from Premier Yarns. To look at these 2, I would think that this was sock yarn too, and when I saw it I was so excited because I was like, man, that is beautiful collars. What you want to look at is what these are made of. This is a microfiber, 100% microfiber. So this is not what you'd want to use for socks. Look, there's no stretch to it at all. Look at this one. Let me find it. 50% superwash merino wool. Superwash means that the wool has been treated to where you can wash and dry it like normal, but I still highly, highly recommend hand washing. Your socks will last longer and you will love me for it. Okay, we have some other type of merino, 25% bamboo, and 25% nylon. You want to look for there to be some nylon in your sock yarn because that actually strengthens the fibers and it gives it a little bit of stretch. So you will get a lot longer wear and a lot better fit with an actual sock yarn. It shows a sock right here. This beautiful, beautiful yarn, also by Premier Yarns. It's the Deborah Norville collection as well. And it's still called Serenity, but this is called Serenity Sock Weight. This is called Serenity Garden Yarn. And so they create different things. So do look at your yarn before you purchase it. Okay. So now to get the loom marked and how to do the cast on. Now do not be scared. We are doing a toe up Kitchener cast on. I will go step by step how to do this, but here is why I like the toe up Kitchener. Like it, you don't really tell a difference. It blends right in. And I always like to do it on the bottom of my foot just because it does take a little while to get used to it. And if your tension isn't perfect, I mean, I was right in the middle of a collar change when I did mine, so you can see a difference just because of the collar change. But if you look at the stitches look the same. Yay! Okay. And, ooh, I like these. Okay, these are my stitch markers I'm going to use, and I actually got them out of my Loom Knitting Basics kit from KB. Comes in a little container like this. They're rubber, and I like these. Okay, I'll show you my other loom because I just use little coiled things. And I got rubber bands and coils, and I don't have to use them on this one. Yay! Okay, so we got to mark our end pegs, which if you look, if you don't want to count, if you look on both ends, there's kind of 3 together. There is one that appears to be exactly on the ends, right here and right here. We're going to mark those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark one orange. I'll mark the other one blue. This blue one will be my start to every single row. That way I know, because for this one I did blue on both sides and I've been having some difficulty remembering which one was my start to every row. So I have to go back, count, look, okay, my heel's on this side. So don't do what I did, do what I'm doing. Don't do as I have done, but do as I am doing now. Sorry guys. Okay. For this one, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you're going to count in 9 on both sides and mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Go ahead and mark that with orange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mark that with orange. This is for the toe increase and decrease. And since I like to do my Kitchener tighten up my Kitchener on the bottom, I will actually be doing the heel increase and decrease on the opposite side, but I'm going to do the same colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do orange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This way I know the orange ones are my increases and decreases for my heel and for my toe, whichever way I choose to go. Now for the rest of this, when I come up to my top, I do a rib stitched variant. And so I will knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. Now I don't know that there'll be enough here, so I'll skip 2, mark 1. We'll skip 1, 2, 3. Mark 1. We'll see how far this will go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 puts me at the end. Marking it like this. Actually, these stretch. I'm going to try something real quick, guys. Do these stretch enough? They do. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so these will actually stretch enough, just barely enough, to go over 2 pegs at once. Fabulous. So I'm going to do that instead. And push them down. Oops. Like they stretch just enough. I would not try stretching these farther on any other loom, but basically 2 unmarked, 2 marked, 2 unmarked, 2 marked. All the way around the loom. Now if you don't have markers like this, you can use rubber bands, you can use jump rings, you can use whatever you have around the house, just something to mark these pegs so you know what is going on. Now this is my blue end one. I don't want to stretch that one. I want to make sure I know that that is my end peg. So I'm going to use a different color. I'm running out of other colors anyway, so I'm going to have to find different stitch markers for the... I didn't have enough of these to go all the way around, but I really like those. So I actually used rubber bands from my daughter's like rubber band loom thing to finish it out. The problem using the rubber bands though is eventually, because you're rubbing against them, they snap. So I really, really like these. I did go ahead and switch out that end one just so I'd have another blue one to put on, trying to run those as far as I could. I switched it with a red one. Just whatever you do on your ends, have one a different color so you'll know what you're beginning and what you're end. Alright, cast on time, people. Now, I'm going to see if I can do this in one shot. Sometimes this is a little difficult. Okay, so your yarn, you have your outside strand, and then you actually have an inside strand. And the problem is finding that inside strand. If it is spun really, really tight, it can be hard. But you just kind of reach in, you try to get as close to the middle as you can and pull it out. Alright, there's one strand, so we know my end is in this somewhere. Let's stretch it out until we find it. And get this sock cast on and get going. Of course, if you're like me and get overzealous, you could create a large knot. But you know what, guys? It is all good. Because as long as you take your time and you're calm and you don't let it stress you out, look at that. We got it. Okay. So this being a sock loom, there's no anchor peg. Now one thing I'm going to show you guys that I like, you can start your heel and your toe anywhere you want on this. It doesn't have to be heel this side, toe that side. It doesn't have to be. It could be heel this side, toe this side, or heel this side, toe this side. The reason I'm doing mine like this is because for the Kitchener cast on, it is easier to wrap, just vague reference, it's easier to wrap this way than to start here and wrap long ways. I hope that makes sense, because that's actually a question I've been getting very frequently. So what I do is I hold my yarn out. Do I need to zoom in for this? Yeah, let's just do that anyway. Okay, so what we do, okay, so I'm just holding the string, pull it behind, go over, then you go over, you are weaving back and forth, back and forth, all the way down the loom. What I think is neat is you can kind of see the color change happening as you're wrapping it. But anyway, let me get it all the way down to the other end. Get it untangled from my pegs. Trying to watch the loom and make sure I have this in focus at the same time. Okay, and when you get to the edge, it's a little more tricky, but you just do the same thing. See, one thing I'll show you is, okay, you're going over the peg, over the peg, over the peg. You got your last one. Here's the very last peg. You will notice you have to wrap it in front for it to be covered. Now, if you wrap this, this sets in motion which way I will be wrapping for this entire project. Some people are more comfortable wrapping counterclockwise. Some are more comfortable wrapping clockwise. If you get this down here, it's at the wrong end. Go back up to your top. You have to undo it, but go back to your top and wrap this one instead of wrapping this one. Wrap this one first and go down. Hope that made sense, y'all. Okay, so I basically do, the whole body is done in a U or flat stitch. That's just simple. So we are going to do one round. One round, that's just to lock these in so they don't pop up and go nowhere, of your flat stitch or your U-stitch. Oh, might help if I have this in focus. Sorry guys. See, all I'm doing is holding that over, taking that bottom over the top. When you get to this other side, be careful because you don't want to pop these off, because if you do, sometimes it'll just kind of cause all of them to just pop off. So you just do this all the way around, and that will finish and secure in your cast on. Then we will get started with the toe. Here's what it looks like when the cast on is complete. So now we have to do the toe, which of course this is a toe up pattern, and we are using a short row toe and heel. So the toe is going to be done on this side, from the red one over here to the orange one over here, and it'll involve decreasing in 9 on both sides to our marked pegs, and then increasing back out. What you want to do, working yarn is coming from this side, you flat stitch all the way over to this side, which I've already went ahead and done that just to save some time. Let me zoom in so I can move this farther away. What I did was I actually kind of tucked in my cast on tail underneath one of the rubber bands I have here, just to hold it out of the way. It wants to pop over. If you don't have it, I suggest just holding the string over to the side while you do this stitch. This is our first decrease, and this is how you will do your decreases for the entire project. There are 2 different ways you can do it. One's called wrap and turn, which is over top the current stitch, or you can take the stitch off the peg, put the working yarn under it, and then wrap and turn. I prefer this way. I mean, it was really the way that I was taught, and neither way is wrong. You can use whichever way you prefer. For me, the way I knit this way seems to fill in the toe a little better, so I don't have as many little gaps in the toe and the heel. But once you lift your stitch, put the working yarn under it, or if you just wrap and turn, you just work back to the other side. And I flat stitch these pretty tight because I don't want any extra wiggle room here, because I want those stitches to be tight together. Work back to this side. When you're back to this side, you're going to do the same thing. This is the end peg on this side. So I'm going to take the stitch off, working yarn underneath, put that stitch back on. There we go. I kind of pull it pretty tight. You've got to be careful with some looms, you pull it too tight. See, it's even pulling my previous stitch right here tight too. So I knit that off, and then I kind of pull it tight. Some looms, if you pull too tight, when you go back to knit over, you may break pegs. So as you can see, I've got 1 decrease on this side, 1 decrease on this side. I'm going to work back over here. You can see this one has 2 decreases, so then I will decrease this one. I will work over here, decrease this one. You go back and forth decreasing 1 each time, and you're slowly going to go until you have it decreased on that peg and that peg. I'm going to go ahead and do all the decreases. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll get started on the increases. This is what it looks like when you have your decreases done from the inside. Of course, the collars will be different and according to what you choose, but I'm going to show you there's 2. Now, when you are using a solid collar, you have to pay attention, because it can be very easy to see that and think that is 1 stitch and accidentally do it 2 times. See, there's another one where it looks like it's 1 stitch. You can see all of these have 2 stitches on it, except for this one, but I lifted it and I'm ready to go. So it will have 2 stitches on it, because this is where your yarn should have ended up, is the last marked peg on this side. As you can see, I done this one over here. Kind of hard to tell, it's in purple, but I done that one. Every single one of these to this corner have 2 stitches on it now. The ones in between here only have 1. Now for our increases. The increases are very, very simple. All you do is pick up 1 each time. So you'll work up to this one and you'll work back to this one. Let me just show you. Okay, so of course, oops, I'm pulling. Let me readjust my camera just a little bit. There we go. See, I've been knitting very, very tight, which in all honesty, there are a lot of other looms that if I would have used wrapping as tight as I do, I most likely would have broke a peg. Okay, so this is my first peg I'm coming to that has 2 stitches on it. It's hard to see, but just trust me. There we go. You can see them both. And see, that's the last marked one. So what I'm going to do is take both those stitches over the one. The yarn is coming from behind. Again, I'm going to make sure that's wrapped pretty snug. The tension doesn't need to be this tight once you get to the body. If you work this tight for the whole thing, you're going to have some sore hands and elbows, most likely. Okay, I'm just going to kind of work a couple with you. Oops. Okay, and then we're to the first one over here. It has first one with 2 stitches on this side. So we'll go ahead and wrap it. And then we will go back, pick up. Okay, here's the next one with 2 stitches. You will work this out until you have just these 2 on the end left. Alright, so you can start to see the indent here, where this is where your toes are going to be. Looks pretty interesting right now. See, I still have 1 left on this side and 1 left on this side that has the double. I could go back and forth and work those, but I have found that if I actually, because this was my last double, I worked it, so I would be naturally going back to this one and then back to this one. So what I'm actually doing is leaving these 2. I'm starting here, doing my flat stitch, and I'm just going to work in a circle now to create the body of my sock, because what you have just done is this part right here. We just, and this craziness right here is going to be right on the bottom of the foot. I will show you how to tighten it up step by step. As you can see, the collar didn't exactly match up. That's why I do it on the bottom of the foot. But this is what the toe will look like when it is done. There are adjustments you can make. If you have a very wide foot or an extremely narrow foot, if you have a wide foot, instead of going in 9 on each side, you can go in 8 or 7 on each side. The reason I did 9 is I separated the loom in half, and then I divided those into 3 sets. 3 sets about as even as I could get. That usually seems to give me a very symmetrical, even shaped toe. That's the only reason I did that for this sock. So now you just work in the round until the sock is as long as you need for your heel. Okay, so the body of the sock is done. Now, when you gauge and everything and measure with this loom, I really suggest gauging instead of just kind of sticking your foot in to see, because you can't really stick your foot in too far, but due to the narrowness of it, it makes the Kitchener cast on a lot easier to tighten up, which we'll be doing that shortly. But you can see it shows the body's this long, but you've got about this much more, so you do need to swatch. Definitely do that. Okay, we've done up to here. I haven't tightened up the cast on edge yet, but we're going to go ahead and do the heel. The heel is a short row heel. It's done exactly the same as the toe. So I'm going to get you started on that, and then I'll show you how to tighten up your Kitchener. Okay, so we are just using the flat stitch, nothing fancy. You want to make sure that the heel is done on the same side as the Kitchener, because this is going to tighten up and this is going to be on the bottom of the foot. So you want your heel on the bottom of the foot as well. Side of our Kitchener, this is going to be the side for our heel. Now I already flat stitched over to this corner right here. Now what we do, there are a lot of different ways to do this. I just prefer the lift, wrap, and turn. Not sure why. I just like it. You can just do the wrap and turn. I mean, it's really up to you. Okay, so we lift the stitch, wrap, and then we turn. And you flat stitch all the way back to the other side. And you're actually doing this the exact same way. You're going to do your decreases down to your marked pegs, and you're going to increase back out. See, just like this, there's nothing different at all. You're just not going to have this hot mess right here to deal with when it's done. It's all going to be connected. So let's get going with this Kitchener. Kitchener! Sorry, I think it's a fun word. You want to start on the opposite side of your tail. I'm going to try to zoom in and show this pretty close. Hopefully my camera will stay focused correctly. But what I do is I kind of stick my finger underneath the stitches and I try to find that very first elongated stitch. You see, that looks normal, and then we have this stitch right here. Now you want to do this slow because this does have some wool in it, and wool will tend to felt. I'm sure I'll get a couple balls on here and I will show you what it looks like. But you tied that up, and then you go to the next one, tighten that up. See, this string is going to get a lot longer as you go. You can see there are a couple. Here is the new stitch we made right there. And if you do this correctly, there will be no difference in the only difference will be your collaring, unless you're using a single collar, but it should look the same on the front and bottom. I just like to do it on the bottom just in case the collaring doesn't match up or whatever. Okay, and I do find this easier to do when I have variegated yarn because I can kind of see a little better and I don't get things mixed up. And one thing you'll notice is when you do it like this, tighten them up, if you pull the wrong strand, okay, I see this string right here is tightening up. So now we're going to go to the next one. I just like to hold these because that's not the way you want to tighten them up. You want to tighten them up this opposite direction. See right here, that line of blue? That are the new stitches that we are creating. Now there are multiple ways you can do the Kitchener cast off. This one, honestly, to me, seems to be the least mind-boggling. You can actually take them off and needle knit them closed if you are a needle knitter and know how to do a Kitchener cast off, or just know how to do the Kitchener in general. But this you just weave and then you just tighten up. The hardest thing is just doing the cast off, the tighten up here slow. See how right here, if I was going fast, I might have missed that. I got a little bit of the yarn coming up through, and it's just one of the next stitches. So, oh, sorry. See, I pulled that out, so it's not there. Now, sometimes I'll use my loom tool to kind of help me here. Sometimes I just use my hands. Actually, I think I can zoom this out a little bit now. There we go. I'll do a bit more of it with you, and then I'm going to kind of work my way through the middle of it, because this does take a while to do if you take your time with it, which I definitely suggest. You can pay attention more to the stitches to make sure they're looking right, and especially if you're using something with wool in it, you don't want to go fast at all. As you can see, the string gets longer and longer as you go, which you're going to want to pull it through faster and faster. Don't. Keep pulling it through kind of slow. Of course, unless you're using a yarn that doesn't have any animal fibers in it, then you should be okay. I'll do this one right here. See, I'm not even halfway through. We have done this much, and here's how long this string is already. Just as you keep going, keep holding it separate and do just one at a time. When I get over closer to this edge, I will show you what to do on that side. We're over to this side, and we have a substantial amount of yarn here. The one bad thing about the Kitchener cast on is you do end up with a lot of scrap yarn. But you save this, put it up, because if you end up with a hole in your sock, you can use that to mend it, which there's other videos to teach you how to do that. But okay, we're getting over to the edge. The stitches are getting too small to really stick my finger under them. So I just kind of use my loom tool, pull a couple of them up. Now this is the side where you got to be careful, because you don't want to be tightening up one of the back stitches while you are pulling this through. As you can see, like just pulling it, I'm ending up with this big bump. So every once in a while you got to straighten out this right here, just to make sure you don't end up with big knots there. There we go. So I'm going to pull the next one out, and I'm going to hold these down, because this end part is really probably the most challenging. So I'm pulling it through slow. I'm seeing that it's starting to bunch up, so I'm staying ahead of that. And see where all the strands are rubbing together? This is where you get issues with the fabric felting, which, if you're unfamiliar what that means, when it felts, it has a natural animal fiber in it. Wool is very notorious for this. It basically, the strands are very coarse, and they will basically lock onto each other and create like one piece of fabric. Kind of think of if you run your fingers up the strand of your hair, how it's kind of, it doesn't feel the same. You kind of get caught up on it. Animal fiber does the same thing. Some are worse at it than others. Okay, so let's zoom this in real good. We've got over here, got kind of not really sure exactly what's going on. There's one little loop. We're holding this really tight. Just make sure this is the right loop. And it is. But we want to make sure we are pulling it from the correct side. There we go. I can zoom that back out now. Okay, sorry about that. Alright, so now we can tighten that one up. And I've got my yarn kind of over to the side, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on it and straightening it out as I go. This is probably the part that really gets people and frustrates them, is this right here, where it wants to kind of tangle up. But as long as you are paying attention, you can get past that. Now, the way we want to do this, we gotta find what our next strand is. Because we don't want, basically you want to get it to where you're pulling this and it's tightening all that up. So it looks like, let me see, I pulled on it some. Let me see if this strand right here, there we go. See, it wasn't one of the V ones, it was actually a long one in between. But once you get all the way over there, if you pull on this, you can kind of see it. So we tighten this one up. See, it's a lot of yarn on this cast on edge. Okay, now let me see here. Are we at the end yet? There we are. So when you're at the end, you will be able to pull and tighten this up. But okay, as you can see now, there is only one loop left. Lots of times, because these two loops are together, you can pull the cast on edge, the string through that. But here, I will show you just on this last stitch what you can do if you have a knot felted up and you have to get it, you need to cut it out. You can mark, make sure you have just the stitch you're working on. There we go. Mark that. Cut your knot out, which we are at the end, so it doesn't matter that the knot is this huge, massive piece. There we go. Actually, it's just this little tail end. But since we are, since we are at the end, just to make it easier, I'm cutting all this out. That is the bulk, which you can do that if you end up with extra right through here or something, you have a spot felled up, well, it'd be here. That's a lot more difficult to deal with, and you would benefit by doing something that's called a Russian join, but then you have to be very, very careful the rest way out. But I always notice typically it's right here is where I'll end up with my problems, when there's just a few left to go through. So this tapestry needle is super overkill, but it was the first one I could find. Alright, and now all you do is take the tapestry needle and replace the loom tool with the tapestry needle. There we go. And you pull that through, and your cast on is done. You take a crochet hook, pull that to the inside edge, and there, we've finished up our Kitchener cast on. Now hopefully you guys will go very slow, because I kind of went fast through a part of it, hoping that it would felt up so I can kind of show you how to correct it. Now you can always use a stitch holder if you gotta take like 3 or 4 stitches off, depending on how it felts. But if you just take your time and pull it through slow through the whole thing, you can kind of catch the little spots that are going to felt before it happens. And that's also why it's important to hold these strands up, because when you're pulling, if you don't pull the right way, you're going to tighten up the strand behind it. And that friction there will cause it to maybe start to felt. Alright, so you got this part done. You're going to finish up your heel. To save a bit of time, I did go ahead and work from the back of the heel up a ways. But all you do, your heel, at the very end of it, you will still have, just like for your toes, the 2 stitches on this peg and 2 stitches on this peg. And your final round, you work it all the way around with the double ones. This is how the heel looks when you do it that way. Let me show you. Is the little heel holes can be really, really hard. Let me see. I did both heels on this one differently. So which one are we doing this one? It can be very, very hard to hide like the little holes in the heel, especially right here. So the way I did this, like there's not much of a hole. There's a little hole, but it fills in pretty nicely. All right. So once you get to that point, you just do 5 rows of your flat stitch. That's right here. That's just to get past the rest of the heel area. That's just to get past the rest of the heel area, so that you don't want right at the very back of your heel your texture starting. That's not going to feel very good. So now for this texture, what we are doing is, this is where our marked pegs come in handy. You do 4 rows of alternating purl stitches and flat stitches. Purl, flat, purl, flat, purl, flat, all the way around the loom. And then you do 2 rows of flat stitch. Now I'm going to kind of work a couple rows with you to show you exactly what I'm talking about. And another thing that's extremely helpful, I'll show you how to look at this and tell where you are at. So at the beginning, let's zoom in a little bit. I am right here at the beginning of my row. These first 2 pegs. Get all the yarn. First 2 pegs, I purl. Purl, purl, purl. I'm holding this at a weird angle, so it's not as difficult as I'm making it look. Then we flat stitch the next 2. The only reason I have flat stitching on the ones that are marked is when you're purling, sometimes you'll grab the stitches down here. Now see, as I've been working this, the rubber bands have been breaking off the ones that I wrapped around. It's just the friction, they will do that. But most of it, I was able to get marked with these. So I just pay attention and keep working. But you'd rather find something like this or these bands that are a little smaller just to easily fit over top 2 pegs, or you can use the little circles. You can buy jump rings too that work very well. Alright, so we purl 2. I need to put a little cushion underneath when I'm working. Purl 2. And then flat stitch 2. You continue this pattern all the way around. Purl 2, flat stitch 2. You get back to your first peg, and then you're going to do 2, 3, 4 rows all together. I will work up those 4 rows and then show you what it looks like. If you lose track on counting the 4 rows, which I've got the 4 rows done, you can see where there's these spots where there's these 2 loops sticking up. You just grab that top loop, pull down, and you can count. You see how there are 4 bars there? There's one, there's the blue, yellow, blue, and like the orange color around the back of the peg. That's how you know you've got 4 rows done. And usually what I do, make sure I'm back at my starting peg, and I'll even double check one over here just to make sure something didn't go wonky. But yes, I've got 4 there. Now the next 2 rows, you just flat stitch all the way around, and that's what creates those bars, are the flat stitch. So you do that for 2 rows. I'm back at my starting peg and my 2 rows are done. Now a way to count those is same place where you counted the rows in between. Get this to focus in. You look and you want to see 2 long bars. You can see them here. You want to see the 2 bars kind of sitting out from the rest of the stitches up at the top. Kind of hold it like this so hopefully you can see. You can see it there, you can see it there, there, there. See, there's 2 bars sticking up. Now, that is one set, doing the 2 bars. After your 4 rows of knit 2, purl 2, and then your 2 rows of flat stitch, that is one set for your cuff. If you like the length of the cuff I made here, I did 12 sets. Now, I didn't really care to use a row counter for this. So to count your sets, see if I can get this. Okay. Hoping this is focusing in good enough so you can see what I'm counting. You can see all this flat. This is the end of the heel. And there's my 4 rows of, this would be the knit stitches. You're going to see a bar across. That's one set. Bar, 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now when you get up here, you have to stretch them. 10, 11. I just did the last one, so that was my 12th one. At this point, you just do the very top part of the cuff, which is just knit 1, purl 1, and let me see, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows. So you do 8 rows, which, if again, show you ways to know how to count them. You can count by these bars in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or you can count by the diagonal little V shapes right here. Go like that. So do that. Do 8 rows of single ribbing, which is, when I say knit for this pattern, it's meant as a flat stitch, so you will. And it doesn't matter which way you start. Flat stitch 1, oops, flat stitch 1, then purl stitch 1. There we go. Then you flat stitch. You flat stitch and purl stitch, flat stitch, purl stitch, and they will be lined up. Your flat stitches will be your flat stitches for 8 rows, and your purl stitches will be purl stitches for 8 rows. Get that done. I'll show you how to cast off. Okay, so the ribbing at the top is done. The only thing left to do now is the cast off. I'm just using a basic super stretchy cast off. Which what you want to do is you want to wrap the working yarn around the loom like 3 times so you have enough. So there's 3. There we go. And then cut. Let me zoom in to show you how to do this. Now with your super stretchy, you should be coming from your beginning peg. You want to skip 1 peg, pull the yarn up through the next. Yes, at the beginning there's going to be a lot of yarn. And you kind of got to watch, because with your wool it can start to felt and want to stick to itself. Go back one, pull the yarn down. The yarn is now coming from your second peg here, 1, 2. Skip a peg. This is your step 1, and go up through the next. Step 2, go back 1 and go down. Now the yarn's coming from your third peg, so you skip 1, up, go back 1, and down. You want to do this all the way around the loom. Alright, I'm back at the beginning. I just done that peg and went back to that one. I'm going to go ahead and redo this very first peg just to connect both of those. Now you just take your loom tool and take everything off the loom. Once it's off the loom, it's going to look different here. It's going to look a little weird. It's been on the loom, so you got to stretch it. And then you also need to wash it. That will help all the stitches relax, and you will see your final result, exactly what size you got. See, look at this. This one right here has been washed. This one hasn't. Look at the size different where the stitches relaxed. See, washed, not washed. Like, that's, especially for the foot part, that's a good deal difference. And then for the cuff, you're going to know. Notice if your cuff isn't going up as long as the others. I mean, I could sit here and stretch it, but you see how the top is kind of stretched out and stuff. All of that is fixed with blocking, but with the socks, for blocking, all you do is get your, I use a wool wash. There's plenty you can get. I soak them in the sink with the wool wash. I just go by the directions on it for 15 minutes, and then I just kind of, you don't want to rub them or anything like that. I just kind of squeeze out excess water, lay them flat, and I usually put a towel underneath and on top, and I just push out as much water as I can. And then you either just lay them flat to dry somewhere. If you got a sock form, you can put it on the sock form to dry, which I'll show you with this one. See, when it's wet, you can set it up on the sock form to dry, and it'll help shape the heel and stuff a little more for you. Or if you have drying racks, which I actually have a couple drying racks that I use. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that it was informative and that you enjoyed this pattern. It's a very cozy pattern. I really like how the cuff hugs my legs. And it has a neat texture on the inside too, which I'll show you. So if you fold the cuff down, you don't have this awkward looking texture. You still have a nice looking design here. Yay! Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Direct link for the PDF, the sock yarn, the loom itself, anything else that I can think of that I'm not thinking of right now, and of course individual video clips. Every section of the video is broke down into individual clips if you need to go back and reference anything. All of that is in the video description below, as well as contact information and all my social media stuff. Please leave comments and questions in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button, the thumbs up. Please remember to share and subscribe. And if you don't have your notifications turned on, make sure you turn on notifications so whenever I have a new video come out, you'll receive an email. But look at these. I love this loom. Like these are socks. They're not house slippers. They are socks. These are actual, just regular, everyday socks. Now, of course, you weave your ends in and cut them off. But yes, socks. Make sure, that's why it's so important. You want to make sure you wash your swatches before you start, or else you can end up with a very big difference in what you think you're going to get and what you actually get. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.